You're listening to Chameleon Church, biblical antidotes for the modern man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
Good morning. It's Wednesday morning. No, it's Tuesday morning. I woke up from a really weird dream and was puzzled by it, and that sidetracked me. Yeah, it was weird. It was like, does anybody know anything about ritual food smearing? That's what I think was happening to me in my dream. You know, when I woke up from it, thinking I had just gotten slimed, and a little upset with myself because I normally wake myself up when something like that happens. You know, I snap out of it. So as not to, I don't allow my dreams. More of a curse. I don't allow my dreams to rule me. I wake up and I stop, and I wake up from those things. It's practice. You got to practice that. And I didn't. And it wasn't until after the fact that I went, whoa, and I woke up going, what the heck was that about? It was, like a ritualistic food smearing thing. I don't know. But it was Latin based. It was like, I don't know, because I had really good caldo for breakfast for dinner last night. Caldo is oxtail soup. You know, it's a Mexican. Caldo is like, I guess, a stew, I guess you would call it. But so that was a little weird. Maybe our esteemed Rabbi, you've heard about ritual food smearing? It's a thing. I looked it up this morning. Well, while it was happening, it was like, but I was like forced. There was like these really big guys, and they didn't look completely human, if you want to know, if you know what I mean, behind me, making sure I couldn't move away. And then, of course, it doesn't help that a woman was presiding over it, and it was for my birthday, but it's not my birthday. And it had, like cream, like sour cream, but more like that Mexican cream. And there was like potatoes and corn and maybe some sort of meat and rice, and they mixed it all up. And then it was like, and then as they were smearing it on me, I remember going to like maybe some layers of hypnotic,
Mm-hmm.
And then after, trancey, hypnotic. And then when I came out of that, I was like finishing up, and the plate was done, and that's when I woke up. He was like, what the heck is going on here? Maybe I shouldn't have shared that live. So I'm trying to figure out what that's about. But I slept in the studio last night simply because, anyway, that's another story. Everything's fine. So I don't know. I need to pray through this room for sure. So, thank you for the prayer, Alyssa. But so that's that's never fun, and it's just stupid, when you're under attack and things like that happen. Did they change these name tags on here?
No, you can choose which ones. So if you go to banner, no. If you go to brand, you can go there, or you go here.
How did you do that?
If you go to brand and then you see theme.
Oh, minimal. Yeah, okay, yeah. Because whoever had it on default that's just a little too large. But since you guys know who we are, so anyway, edit that out in post. Yeah, we're not. I'm not touching these things. This is live. But I mean, any of you know about anything about that stuff, let me know, because that sucked. That wasn't a good thing, that's for sure. It's not like, oh, blessing. Yeah, no, this is something coming at me. So,
well, I had a dream a couple of weeks ago regarding guy that I'm working with, and it was very disturbing because throughout the whole dream, what I remember about it was that there was these centipedes that kept coming at me. And no, and at the end of the dream, there was a 3-foot centipede that was coming through. You don't want to be messing with a 3-foot centipede because you're going to end up being lunch at that point. And I wasn't in danger. Like, I didn't feel like it was that I was in imminent danger, but they kept trying to come through this like barrier, whether the wall or something like that. When I woke up, my wife has an ability to understand dreams. She's kind of got that Daniel anointing there. And I knew it was a warning. But when I explained it to her, she told me, yeah, you got to be really careful with this guy. And it's a warning to him. So I called him up a few days later and I said, well, this is what the Lord told me. And, bless him, he received it. And it all had to do with an issue that he was struggling with. And I said, God wants to bless you, but until you resolve this and what those centipedes mean, he can't go ahead, because what's going to happen is if he blesses you and you don't resolve this, you're going to sabotage him. And he went back and reflected on everything else and came to me a few days later and thanked me so much for it and everything else. And it was one of those rare occurrences where people actually receive a prophecy of a warning for good and actually perform teshuvah, repent. It was wonderful. So we're experiencing, I think, a lot more of that lately.
Yeah, a couple of years or so ago, I had a dream about it was like a package, but there was those big, huge, like Egyptian moth type things.
Yeah.
And they were frozen and they were thawing out and then unleashed. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't good. But it was a warning dream towards something that we were praying about.
Yeah. And
it was like, yeah, we're not touching it. We're not touching it. We're not going to be involved with that. And, this was more like a side swiping attack type thing. It wasn't, yeah. So that's why I was doing, so I woke up and I was doing a little research for the last hour or so about ritual smearing. And apparently it's a thing. Yeah. Yes.
Again, I'm going through this, getting to the end of this book called Musical Truth. And man, oh man, it's a very disturbing book to read. I got to tell you, as much as I know about the elite and what goes on behind the scenes, the amount of detail and depth that this guy goes into and exposing what they do, and just how unbelievably perverse and evil almost every aspect of our society is. Like, if it wasn't for God's protection upon us and his provision of goodness, we have no idea what, Skywatch TV with Derek and Sharon Gilbert, with Josh Peck, they've come out with this new movie regarding child sex trafficking. And they say it's not just about perversion, it's about the power that they get. I mean, they really go into the demonic side of things. And I was watching this clip from the movie, and it said there's something like 500,000 children are trafficked in the United States every year. Just trying to get your head around that kind of number. And this is all part of what they do. And yet here we live in a little bubble, and we're so thankful because we actually got grass on our front lawn last week. They put down the grass after all this time. And I get to look out my window now and I see grass on our lawns, and I'm happy for that. And, we're in this little subdivision type thing, and we're protected. We're walled off from so much of what goes on out there. But what we see happening with, violence in the streets and everything else is that protection is breaking down because of iniquity, because of disobedience, because of rebellion against God. And he's allowing all this, and we're starting to see more and more of it. And for as much as we know about it, how disturbing it is for us, what happens to people who don't really understand this stuff? And now they're going to have to come face to face with it.
Yeah. I think the way it works a lot of times is the enemy is content with our ignorance. And it's okay with him if we don't have understanding of the way he works or the things he does to us. He's fine with that.
Yeah.
Because his end goal is to, take as many of us with him as he can. So it's not like, it's not like he's necessarily into the popularity contest. He's really not. He's completely content being behind the scenes, and but my people perish for lack of knowledge. I want to know about these things. I want to know what these things represent and mean, because I want to be, cognizant of that attack, so I can better, combat it. And usually this kind of stuff is prophetic in nature, to prepare, or to, it's like, hey, because something's coming.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I'm not satisfied or content with ignorance, or just going with the status quo, or that's silly, Allan. You just explained it. You already explained it. You had some caldo, some ox. You had a certain soup, a Hispanic soup, and then you had this dream of this Hispanic thing. So that's people will just write it off because it's a lot easier and it's less work. But yeah, no. One of my favorite dreams, and it's kind of silly because I should have known, but I had a dream. It's really interesting. This was years ago, and actually, like decade plus ago. And I went and I got some interpretation for it, and it's, to me, it wasn't obvious. So I'm content and I'm fine saying, oh yeah, it's not like I'm like this renowned dream interpreter. You know what I mean? But I had just gotten a job. So, the Ed Sullivan Theater, where David Letterman ended up taking over the Ed Sullivan Theater. So he takes over the Ed Sullivan Theater, right? And he turns it into the late night theater, right? Well, it was a theater like that. So it was an old school theater, and it was a TV show. And I was the new entertainment director, which means I was in charge of all the entertainment, whether that you were a writer, and involved with the wardrobe or the music or anything that had to do with that side of this show. I was now the new director for this show for this guy. And so but the guy's name was Shlomo. And so it said Shlomo. So I'm taken to this theater during the day by a pastor friend of mine, an East Coast pastor friend of mine. He drove me to this theater. I was going there for my first meeting. And as I was walking up, this guy, he was taller than me, dark skin, but fair, but very sharp features, and these piercing bluish gray eyes. And that's all I saw, and I was introduced that he was Shlomo. And so I was brought into I was brought into the building, and I was introduced to all the dancers, the musicians, the writers, anybody that has to do with any sort of creative aspect of this guy's show. I was now their boss. And it was an old school type of theater. And I remember having, I was meeting with them, and, and there's a lot of questionable types, as far as, identity and, it's the entertainment industry. So there are various, stuff. So, and I'm being introduced to them, and, I'm now their boss, and I'm being introduced to them as their new boss, But I woke up from that dream going, wow, and I couldn't, and what is this Shlomo name? Is it an old jazz guy? No, that's something else. This and that, and I'm like, oh, Solomon. Mm-hmm. That's and I was like, well, what the heck? Why am I'm working for Solomon in a creative director position? What is going on? And then because I was there during the day. And then at night when I showed up, it was like all the fanfare, all the lights, all the press, all the red carpet, all the, velvet rope and all that. And it was like, what's going on with, and someone explained that I had been in that role of a creative, but now I was leading creative, that I had become that wisdom for that. Anyway, it was a very interesting dream, but it's like, but you know what, the thing that I'm thinking about, the reason why I shared that was because I think that when I meet Shlomo for the first time, it'll be the same guy that was in my dream.
Hmm.
I'm pretty confident of that. Isn't that weird?
Very cool.
Yeah. So this is a Communion Church show, The Dream.
Yes.
What's your dream? I see a snake in a big vest. Not that kind of dream, Pee-wee. It's a big snake in a vest. Oh, man.
So did you have a Sukkot celebration?
Yeah. Yeah, so last Friday night we had people over, and we were out in the sukkah. It was good, yeah, because we have some tiki torches going, and one of those outdoor fireplaces. So we moved it up, in front of the sukkah. So we had a nice fire, and yeah, it was good. It was good, and then we had and then on Saturday, some friends we found out were in the area. So they came, and them and friends of theirs, they live on the road. So they have these huge, massive fifth wheel RVs. And we were able to put two of them in our driveway side by side with their, pop outs. It's a pretty big driveway. So they stayed a couple days. And so we hung out with them in the sukkah Saturday night. Then we went out to dinner in Park City on Sunday night. Haven't been out to Park City, out on Main Street for a while, and it was kind of a ghost town. It's chilly, man. It's getting chilly at night. It's getting in the 30s at night, and it's still hitting high 70s in the day, which is confusing the fish a little bit. So the fishing has been a little rough. But and I say that only because I've been guiding recently. So they were here for a couple of days. A lot of people don't know that it's like a traditional mitzvah to host strangers or travelers during Sukkot. Remember that movie? Did you ever see that movie?
Ush Pezin?
Yeah, is that the one? Is that his old jail buddy shows up?
Yeah.
Such a great movie. And his wife's she's not having it. He's like, but we got you, it's a mitzvah.
Oh yeah, that was a whole.
You're back into the life of crime.
I don't know if someone had lent that to us. I saw it years and years ago, but oh my god.
Yeah. I saw it years ago.
Hysterical.
Yeah, it's a good little movie. People listening have no idea what we're talking about. I'm going to say that 9 out of 10 have no idea what we're talking about. It's a movie. It's a Hebrew movie. It's a Jewish movie in Hebrew about
Israeli.
An Israeli, yeah, an older man and woman, and it's during Sukkot, and they set up their sukkah. And he used to be. What's that?
He's ultra-Orthodox.
And he has an old buddy from his past because he used to be like a thief or whatever.
Yeah.
And his old buddy gets out of jail and comes and pays him a visit and has him basically, hey, can I stay with you a couple of days? So he's hiding him out like in his sukkah.
Well, when it says that in Hebrews 13 that we are to show hospitality, show hospitality, we should not. Hebrews 13, we shouldn't neglect to show kindness because we don't know if we're going to entertain angels.
Angels or not, yeah.
And
angels unaware.
Yeah. So the biblical definition for hospitality is showing kindness to strangers. So the whole idea about the Ush Pezin, which means stranger, Maimonides, the Rambam has written a lot of stuff on that. But it's the whole idea that you are to welcome people into the sukkah. You're to feed them before you. And there are some who actually believe that when Joseph and Mary came into Bethlehem and that there was no place in the upper room. It says the translation is the inn. I don't know why. because that's not what it means. It means the upper room. So it's the same as when Elijah was coming through and the Shunammite woman had her husband prepare a room, another chamber. That's the same concept. That was the guest room, place of honor. And so there were some who believe that actually Joseph and Mary actually stayed in a sukkah, as opposed to, the barn.
Yeah. Well, another word for manger or corral is sukkah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's explain all of that. Yeah, it actually talks about that in here. Let me see.
Yeah, the whole idea of which cuisines.
Yeah.
I wonder if Amazon has it.
Oh, has the movie? Yeah, it talks about what's his name? Was traveling and put his animals in a sukkah. The same word that we use for sukkah. It's like a stable, a stall. Yeah, but I explained that in here.
Because this whole idea that Yeshua would have been born with the animals all around him, no self-respecting Jew would ever have that happen. The animals are unclean. So, it was in the barn and it was actually in the feeding trough, and all of the animals would have been out. Desiree says that Amazon does have it, so there you go.
Yeah. Anyway, so we had these visits. So we found out that people that we know were in the area. They were somewhere down the valley, and they were looking for a place to stay a day or two. And so we, you can come here. And so that's just, most people don't know that part of I'm going to say a traditional mitzvah is to host strangers or travelers. So we did. We would have anyway. I just thought it was. So they're both of these families, with children and everything, they're both coming into understanding regarding these things, and have probably come into more of an understanding in this season than ever before. So we got to have dialogue about it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the families was more versed than in things of this type of thing, the spiritual, the prophetic, the whatever, than the other one. And but yeah. And yes, I was on last night, Smiley. And so that was cool. And so we were able to share some of this information with them about the feast and this and that and the other. And apparently they're friends with people that are friends with other people that we know that do this and that do understand. So it's very interesting, the connection, because one of these families we've known out from Dallas, 10, 12 years. Not that we're like hung out, because they've been on the road for most of the time, but we know them through other friends. That she was in ministry with a dream interpretation prophetic ministry in Dallas that we know of. So anyway, it was just very interesting. Yeah, there you go, Karen. Thank you, Karen. That's the one I was looking for. So yeah, that's that reference in Genesis is in my book. I just wasn't finding it. So we're having a good little sukkah, and so on Friday it will be the 8th day, the high Sabbath again, and we will be having another shindig here with a bunch of people, or I don't know how many people, but everyone's invited to come, and yeah, it's good. Can you believe it, man? Remember entering into Passover? It's been an interesting 7 months, hasn't it?
Like,
to say the least.
And
go ahead.
I think that a lot of what was, prophesied and spoken about is that there's going to be a lot of realignments going on. And I think, certainly it's been the case for us that we're being positioned to actually succeed during this time. The ministry is starting to grow. We're getting ready to launch. As a matter of fact, this afternoon, I have to go talk to the pastor of the church that we've been meeting at for the holidays, and I want to talk about having weekly services there. And so, getting the new congregation established. I've got a social media coordinator. She's finishing up a new logo. We're renaming, brand new congregation, everything else. And I've reconnected with a friend of mine from way, way back who came out, his new wife, and they look like they want to come out and start supporting the ministry and everything else. So there's some really cool things that are happening. And it's almost as if, like I said, that, for so long that most of North America has been in this bubble, this other stuff, that's breaking down. And yet God's people, the remnant, are being put in this protective bubble, that things aren't going to be affecting us. We had to do some shopping yesterday. And so we went out and hit a couple of stores, and we just flat out, would you have a mask? No, we're exempt. Nobody said anything. We just walk in. I was in Costco yesterday, probably a couple hundred people in there. We're the only ones not wearing a mask. Didn't care. And I'm seeing more and more this separation between those who know and those who aren't afraid. And I said this to my wife. I said, I can't believe that nobody is squawking about this. Nobody is making an issue about this. And nobody is claiming the exemption. I went into a clothing store. I was looking for a new blazer. And I walk in, she says, do you have a mask? I said, no, I'm exempt. She says, okay, then you have to social distance and, don't touch anything. Well, how am I supposed to? And then, so I actually tried on one of the jackets. It didn't fit. And they took it, and I guess they're going to go dry clean it now that I've tried it on. I mean, it is whacked out.
Yeah. Well, in Costco, you can't sit on any of the furniture.
Oh, well, yeah.
It's just weird. I mean, didn't they already tell us that? Oh, yeah, we made a mistake. It doesn't actually travel like that.
BBC has come out and said that it actually does travel by air. So it depends on which day you listen to this to.
Exactly. And when that started happening in March, that's when I went, no. They don't have any idea what's going on. This is all a ruse. So since our last show, we had a debate here in the U.S. Hey, don't talk to me about smart, bro. So now the question is was he really sick, or is this just another? Somebody said that. So a friend of mine said, so let's say he has it and he gets cured and he uses the antibodies as the cure. So everyone's going to be cured through Donald Trump. He goes, wouldn't that be awesome? The liberals would just lose their minds. I'm not going to take any of his antibodies. Oh, man.
Oh, I mean, he was taking hydroxychloroquine
right
in the summer when Stella Maxwell came out and, talking about her, how she was treating people and curing people. So, when the diagnosis came and all of a sudden, Kaylee Apney, or however you pronounce her name, all these people, all of a sudden they're all wearing masks and everything else. I'm like, something is bizarre about this. There's so much intrigue and stuff going on. You can't even begin to tell what's going on behind the scenes. And people who think they've got it all figured out, Michael Moore saying that he was, faking it all, and I don't know. There's so many games being played, and there's so much, as I said, intrigue and deception and countermeasures going. I mean, Listen, bottom line is what we know is that Trump is constantly fighting for his life.
Yeah.
And so there's all of these strategies that are being used in order to prevent them. Like I was just reading the other day that apparently there were 3 or 4 assassination teams that they actually found that were dispatched to go take him out. And so all of the stuff that's going on, we have to remember that what we're seeing on the front is not necessarily what's really going on.
Right, right. And his Twitter account's basically just been a big chess game.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll be a very interesting next month.
Well, here we are in Tabernacles, last of the annual Moedim.
Yeah, and now we got a 4-month free for all or so.
So you've got the election in a month. You've got and who knows how that's going to turn out. I mean, there is nothing. There's nothing guaranteed right now.
Yeah.
There's nothing that is secure. You can't even be assured that there's going to be an election. You can't be assured that the election's going to pan out.
I know.
You know, the Democratic states, they're all, you got the ballot harvesting thing going on. And yet somehow or another, Trump's going to win this thing. And then this whole facade is going to come down. I think, coronavirus is probably going to disappear next year.
That's what yeah. So I have some friends that are at a there's Hebrew root movement groups out there, and they do all these like Sukkots or festivities where people are invited to come. I can't think of a worse place to go to than a thing like that. That would be horrible, I think, right? I mean, because you're basically going to be surrounded by 80%, I think, would be the average of just whacked out people. But anyway, so I have some friends that are at one right now, a Sukkot gathering where they're all at, I don't know where they're at, in Missouri or something, Ozarks or something. I don't know where they're at. They're somewhere in that part of the world. At a campground with a bunch of strangers. They don't know anybody there. And there's some whacked out people there, but there's a lot of people at this gathering going around saying that this is the Sukkot that Jesus is coming back at. And it's like, you need to take those people's names down. So at the end of the gathering, you can go back and say, okay, well, you were wrong. And you're probably wrong about the majority of the stuff that you're into. So you should probably go get saved. And, it's like, but man, why do people do that? Why do people do that? Because if they're wrong, I would have to really be certain about something like that to say something like that publicly. Because if you're wrong, you're wrong. It's like, well, you discredit yourself. You just took away any credibility that you think you might have had, or that one might think that you have.
Yeah,
it's just not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Open your mouth when it's the Lord. Otherwise, just shut up. Shut the hell up, man. And you know what? Since we've put some of this, since now we're on the Facebook page on Chameleon Church, our numbers are different. So I just want to let everybody know that neither Darryl or I think we have figured it out. Neither of us believe we have all the answers. Neither of the two of us believe that, no. We're only simply doing this because we've been told to do this. Man, Look at my face. Don't I look like I would be rather sleeping? It's like early here. He's been up for hours or whatever. I'm on mountain time and it's early here. There's Alyssa. She's the one out there hanging out with the 80% projectile I was just mentioning. But don't even think for a minute or a second that Darryl and I think we know what we're doing, or that we've got it all together, or we've figured it all out, or we've arrived. That's just not true. We're simply doing this because this is what we do. This is what we've dedicated our life to. I was asked to host this time slot 2.5 years ago, and then Darryl came on board about, I think, month 1. The other 2 guys are gone that were part of this show. We know that we know more than a lot of people, but we know that we don't know it all. and we're just servants, and we do this because the Lord told us to do it, not because we think we have our How'd you like that? How'd you like that quick catch? Oh my God. I got something in my eye. That's what that was. We don't, so don't talk, say what you want, but we know that that's not true. That's not true. We are always learning and always seeking the Father for more wisdom and revelation. We haven't arrived. We just happen to be the ones on this side of the camera. You could do this for yourself. You could do your own show, if you have a problem with ours. But don't come over here and give us crap. Not that anybody is. I'm just letting everybody, if you're new, we know we don't have it all together. We're just here to serve you and to share with you what the Lord has given us to share. And we appreciate that you're watching on Facebook Chameleon Church, Facebook, YouTube, and the YouTube channel on Messianic Lamb Radio. Our numbers fluctuate. And we appreciate the support, the likes, the sharing, and the those of you that have been coming every Tuesday morning for almost 2 years now. I just wanted to let those that might be new, that if you think you've got us figured out, you don't. We're just we're excited about this stuff. We're excited about the Word of God. We're excited about the Spirit of God and what He's doing and how He's moving. This has been a very interesting 7 months. We've been talking about this. I think Darryl brought up the coronavirus back in January. We started talking a little bit more about it in February, and then in March we both went crap because it hit the Western Hemisphere. So, sometimes you'll hear prophetic utterances, you'll hear prophetic declarations, you'll hear actual prophetic words come out of here. And then we've, so we're open books. We wear our hearts on our sleeves, and we have nothing to hide. And we might actually be too transparent to a fault, So, hey, I don't know if you want to say something while I go get some more coffee, because I'm like mighty low.
Yeah, I'm actually out. I'm already finished. So have one for me too.
Oh yeah, I'll be right.
And what it all comes down to is that we're really, with our small little corner of the kingdom, trying to fulfill the Great Commission, which is to go make disciples. And if we're being obedient to that, then we're going to see people grow. And if we're not helping people grow, then what are we really doing? Everybody's got a different function and purpose within the kingdom. 1 Corinthians 12 talks about that. There are many different parts of the body, all have roles. And so Allan and I have a particular role where we're speaking, not necessarily prophetically all the time, because I don't operate in the office of a prophet. I'm more of a teacher, apostolic ministry, planting and whatnot. But in the end, it's exhorting people to shuv, to return. That's what this season is all about. And this is what the Lord has laid really heavily upon my heart, is that we have to shuv. We have to perform teshuvah. We have to return back to Him in His way. And the church has abandoned this for so long, and we're bearing the fruit of that. It's what we're seeing in especially the U.S. is the fruit of the tree that the church has been eating at for the past 50 and 60 years. But that is from the fruit of abandoning the commandments for several hundred years. Because ultimately, it's like when the United States was established, although the pilgrims who came over and first set up the 15 colonies, they were hardcore believers. I mean, they were godly men and women. By the time you get to the founding of the United States, it was founded by Masons. Washington, Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. They weren't Christians. They were Masons. And so, although there was a Christian veneer that was, put on the Constitution, a couple hundred years later, we're seeing that now fall apart because of the fact that they didn't have a true faith. And same thing happened in Israel. We saw that with that when they came into the land, that they were given the Torah, and within a couple generations, the conquest, they had gone in complete apostasy, and they bore the fruit of all that. So the solution, I think it was Jonathan Cahn who, and I haven't seen it, but my wife was watching Jonathan Cahn's speech on the return that he spoke about and he says that when Israel got its warning shot in Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 10, and that the Assyrians came in, they did a raid and whatnot, that was a warning. And 9/11 was the same. Well, Jonathan Cahn seems to be especially gifted in this area, where he talks about patterns and time frames and stuff like that. So if you read the Harbinger, the Shemitah, what's the other one with the Jezebel spirit? The Paradigm. As I look on my JPEG over there.
Are you looking at your JPEG again?
Yeah, I'm looking at the.
How do you like my new JPEG? How do you like my new JPEG for today?
Back there, you need lights.
No.
Let there be light, and you ignored that. So anyway, he says that the time frame between the initial raid and then the destruction of Jerusalem was 19 years. 8 years ago was 9/11. And so what the U.S. is now coming into is the fruit of ignoring God's warning. And so, but there's still a chance to turn it around. If my people who are called by my name, and this was that verse Christians always go to, 2 Chronicles 7:14. But if we look at the context of what it was right after Solomon dedicated the temple. And God came to him in a dream. 120,000 sheep were sacrificed at Sukkot.
Yeah, it's at the great feast. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it says that they kept the feast for another 7 days, I guess because there was so much food there. Now that's a party that I want to go to.
That's a pretty big party.
God comes to him right after the dedication of the temple. There's this magnificence. There's this, outpouring of, you see the glory cloud. You see, the priests weren't even able to go into the temple because of the glory that was there and everything else. And the people are celebrating and whatnot. And God comes to him and says, you got to keep my commandments. I'm going to take all this away from you. And it was a warning to Solomon, which he didn't, adhere to, because when he had the temple built, within Freemasonry, you've got Hiram Abuff, who actually built the temple. He was sent from Tyre, and he was half Jewish, half Tyrian. And Freemasons believe that he was the first Mason, and there's a good possibility that he brought with him the mystery religions that Solomon ended up, subscribing to when he married all these foreign women. So right after the blessing, there was a warning.
Yeah.
It says, you got to keep my commandments. You got to hold to this. Just because times are good right now,
right?
Don't get comfortable. The church got comfortable. The U.S. got comfortable. And now you see the whole thing falling apart, because when we get comfortable, we get spiritually lazy, and then we go back to the flesh.
Yeah. And next Monday night on the Exodus to Ingathering series, if those of you that are interested, we will be talking about this issue with Solomon that occurred with Jeroboam during the reign of Rehoboam. We'll be discussing that Monday night on Zoom. And if you're interested in knowing about that, go to the Chameleon Church page, leave a message, and we'll give you that information to join us. I would show you the book that it supports it, but I don't have it on my desk. So, but anyway.
Yes. Here David says that contrary to popular belief, the country wasn't founded with a true belief in God. And that's absolutely correct.
He's asking a question.
Well, yes, that is correct. That with the founders being Freemasons, that their God that they were there a lot of, listen, the founders of the country were brilliant. I mean, the U.S. Constitution is probably throughout history one of the most amazing documents.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of insight that they had, but the problem is that the God that they're worshiping isn't the God of Israel. And there's evidence that, I mean, Thomas Jefferson, we know, he was a deist. Most of them were deists. He was very hostile. He came up with his own Bible and got rid of like half the stuff in there. So when you have a faulty foundation, eventually the structure is going to crumble.
Yeah, the majority of them believed in God, but they didn't believe in Jesus as Messiah or as God. So here's the thing: the fact that the Europeans came to the West for religious freedom is what's kept this cart going.
Yeah.
That's what's kept this going. The fact that the Spanish people came to the West in search for gold is why they've had such a rough go of it for as long as they have, and why the Europeans prospered in the West because they came here for religious freedom. The Spaniards didn't prosper here because they came here looking for gold,
and killed natives in that process. So
there's that element to it, because I mean, as we're not saying that the Pilgrims, the Puritans that came here on what was it, the Mayflower, right, the Plymouth Rock people, were perfect, but neither are you and neither am I. We're to imitate Jesus, not Darryl or Allan or the Pilgrims. But the fact that the Pilgrims came here looking for religious freedom from this COE was enough for God to bless it and to work with them. And here we are.
And there's still enough biblical principles within the U.S. Constitution.
Right. I mean, to say, when you declare that we're all created equal in the sight of God, and this, I mean, those things are going to go a long way. I mean, because that's better than the alternative. I mean, all you have to do is look at any democratic. Here we go again. All you have to do is look at any democratic city or state in this union to see what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, what Pilgrims were escaping religious persecution. They didn't want to have to deal with the king. And now you've got Andrew Cuomo just today in New York, or yesterday, saying that if churches and synagogues don't practice social distancing, don't obey him, he's going to shut them all down. He's doing the same thing that Newsom did in California.
Yeah. I'm really
so many others.
I'm a little surprised by Dallas. That guy, Sean, I can't remember his name. Fight, whatever it is, that's running around doing worship.
Mm-hmm.
So he was just in Dallas, and they gave him an hour. And my daughter was like, "Can you believe that?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, because after an hour they released the Rona." David, we're not saying that there's a point where our government brought in a more sound belief in Christ. I'm not saying that. So we're not suggesting that at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to. I think the name Joe Cameron is very familiar to me. I'm not quite sure where I know that name from, but I don't think we've seen it here on the show. The reason why we didn't tell everybody to test everything is because our audience here knows that already. They know better than to just blindly hear what we have to say and not test it. That's why we didn't bring it up. Feich. I don't even know how to say that, Alyssa. Joe Cameron, that's why we didn't say. That's why I didn't say that, because our audience already knows to do that. That's all I'll say for now. So, yeah, think about that, man. We've got how many, man? So we've been having really, really, really smoky Do you think there is with the current administration? We've talked about that on here a gazillion times. You probably are new. I think I do. I think David, I think we actually know each other physically. We believe in the prophetic words that were given regarding a Trump presidency from 2 to 3 to 4 prophets that are credited, that have been vetted. These are, legitimate prophets. I don't know if you know about this, but 8 to 12 years before there was a Trump presidency, the prophecies started coming out about a Trump presidency, and as you know, he was never supposed to win. I mean, even the Republican Party was trying to keep him from winning, but he did win. So we're going with that, and he's a friend to Israel. He's against the he's pro-life, he's pro-Israel, he's pro-family. We're a little confused on how the left is unable to see what this administration has done for the people of this country. They hate this guy so much that they're absolutely completely blinded. It's everybody knows that we believe that this is our position on this show. But both Darryl and I also know that God can raise up a prophetic leader for judgment, and time will tell. So let's say I don't know who spoke. Yeah, Kim Clement, Lance Wallnau, Chuck Pierce. I mean, who are? So that's 3. We only need 2 to 3. So and there has been others. So let's say here, let's look at this scenario. Let's say Trump turns out to be like the bad guy. The orange man is really bad, and the left has been correct all along. And he wins this presidency, and he takes us down the path of devastation the next 4 years. And we're talking whatever, man, neo-Nazi regime, because everyone thinks he's a neo-Nazi, whatever horrific liberal nightmare they think can happen under a Trump presidency. Let's say that actually does come to pass. And it's like, I don't know, The Handmaid's Tale or whatever. I mean, it's like a really bad case scenario, the worst case scenario you can think of. Every liberal's nightmare comes true. Let's say that's the truth. Let's say that's what happens. They're going to look at the right wing. They're going to look at the conservative Republican church, evangelical church that voted. Because you got to remember, they blame us. They blame evangelicals for Trump for the last 4 years, and they don't like us very much because of it. They're going to go, see, we were right and you were wrong. And I'm going to go, well, no, I sided with the prophetic spirit of God. In the flesh, in the earthly realm, you might think this is wrong because it all went tits up. Oh, can you even say that? I'm sorry, Mark. They might think in the worldly realm that it's bad because everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. But if I sided with the spirit of prophecy, if I sided with God, for example, here's a good example. All the priests and all the prophets prophesied that Israel would be delivered from the Nebuchadnezzar's siege of Babylon in 2.5 years. And God tells Jeremiah, I didn't say that. I didn't put that word in their mouth, and I didn't tell them to run around telling people that. In fact, here is the word of God, Jeremiah, and you're the only one that's going to actually be speaking it. So it's you against the world because everyone else is wrong. All the priests and all the prophets are wrong. But don't be afraid of their face, he says. And he tells them, here's what I'm actually saying. No, I'm not going to deliver you in 2.5 years. In fact, you better submit and go with Nebuchadnezzar to Babylon into captivity because I'm punishing you. But go willingly because I have I know the plans that I have for you. They're to bless you. Go to Babylon, go into captivity, and have children and grow crops and harvest and prosper. But this is my will for you, is to go into Babylonian captivity. Well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound like God, does it? No, but that's what God said. And so when Jeremiah took that word to the people and the priests and the prophets, they said, well, because of what you just said, now we're going to kill you. Because that went against the popular vote. The popular vote was God's going to deliver us in 2.5 years because, we're God's chosen people and he loves us. And God's like, no, you're rebellious and you sinned. I'm taking you out. I'm taking you down. Well, let's say, again, let's go back to the hypothetical. If voting for a Trump presidency, if a prophetic word for a Trump presidency is to bring judgment on our country for the blood that we have in our hands, for the let's just simply abortion, I'm always gonna side with the spirit of prophecy, with God, and that's true. His ways are rarely our ways, right? And so we have to consider that. Now, suggesting that in a conversation to a liberal kind of defeats them and blows their whole mind, because because they don't expect to hear that from a conservative Christian or whatever you want to call me. But I'm not an idiot. There are lots of instances in the Bible where Jeroboam, Solomon tries to kill Jeroboam because he heard about the prophecy that Jeroboam had received during his lifetime, during his reign, that he was going to take the kingdom from him. So he went after him. So Jeroboam left. He left the country. He was in exile. And he came back after Solomon died and during the reign of Rehoboam. And the only reason why it didn't happen during Solomon's reign was because of God. God didn't allow it to happen during Solomon's reign because of his servant David, because he honored the covenant that he made with David. So he waited for Rehoboam. But even then, he said, you will always have a descendant on the throne, and Messiah will come from you. See? Because, right? So let's go back to the Jeremiah example. He kept a remnant in Israel, in Jerusalem. And it wasn't until that remnant tried to leave Jerusalem that it went bad for them.
I always laugh at the end of Jeremiah after the destruction of Jerusalem. Then the remnant come to him and said, "Tell us what the Lord says. We'll believe. We'll do whatever it is, even if it's bad."
This is a shithole. That's what they said.
And Jeremiah says, "Okay, I'll ask. You're not going to listen." And 10 days later, it was back 10, the number of testing, and he says to them, "Lord says, don't go down to Egypt.
Don't do it.
I'm warning you. You go to Babylon, like you said, get settled there." And as soon as he finishes saying that, "You're lying. You just told me that you were going to listen no matter what I said." And that's the heart of God's people. Despite the fact that everything Jeremiah had said had come true, despite the fact that he had out-trumped all of the other prophets who were probably mostly dead by now.
Yeah.
And this is the heart of the people. And so when we come and we say to people, this is what God is saying, and this is what Jonathan Kahn is saying, and this is what Chuck Pierce is saying, and this is what you have to shuv, you have to return, you have to come back to the commandments, you have to Jeremiah 6:16, go back to the ancient paths, you have to keep the feast days, you've got to get rid of paganism, you've got to stop accepting things into the faith and into the churches that are an abomination to God, like, I don't know, homosexual marriages and homosexual pastors and all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing mainline denominations that are going down this route now. And God says, you don't get rid of that stuff and judgment's going to come. And the church says, no, we're not going to listen.
So meanwhile, we have
the truth.
Yeah. So meanwhile, we have how many acres in California on fire?
What did they say?
2 or 3 months? It's a lot.
4 times as much as the last great fire, which was, last year, 2 years ago?
They haven't learned, man. I mean,
no. 10% of the entire state is burned down.
Yeah. So we do, like I mentioned earlier, we do a Monday night session. Monday night we have a Bible study. It's a discipleship training program, actually, around my book Exodus the Ingathering, and it covers what Paul talks about in 1 Corinthians 10, 1-12 about Exodus from Egypt to the Promised Land, and how the majority of them die. Well, they die in the desert because God God's not pleased with them because of their fear, doubt, unbelief, and their disobedience. They're not keeping God's commandments, and so He wipes them out. One of God's favorite ways to wipe man out that are in disobedience is with a plague. And so when you're mentioning that, and when you're talking about that, and when you're teaching on that, while we have a thing called a pandemic, this is considered abusive content, because I think I might have said something about, dying of a plague is not like a God thing. That's not like a positive God thing. You don't want to die from a plague. That's not a good thing. And all somebody had to have, all any of you have had to have, is a grandmother or a great aunt or an elderly person, or anybody, your brother, your sister, your daughter, your son, your wife, your husband, anybody in your family die of corona, and you're automatically on your cockadoodle list. And but what am I supposed to do? Change the Bible? Change the narrative for you to make it comfortable? Change the narrative so I don't use words like plagues and virus when talking and teaching on a particular time? You got to remember, this book came out in March. This was written, edited, and gone to print in February, and released to the market in March. How was I supposed to know? I'm not that smart. I didn't know what was happening in Wuhan back in October. I'm not that guy. But prophetically, apparently I am. So I'm not going to change the biblical narrative to suit your prejudices or to suit your agenda. I'm just not going to do that. Call me whatever you want to call me. Think of me anything, however you want to think of me. I don't care. You think I'm going to change the Bible regarding virus and plagues and death because of disobedience by virus and plague and death? Because we're in a pandemic? No, you got the wrong guy. You obviously don't know anything about me. So why is California burning? Well, look at their politics. Look what they're doing to their own. Look at what they're doing. And this is just going to become more widespread. I mean, do you know that? You remember that little thing called the angel of death that went over and through Egypt, and the Israelites had to put blood on their doors to keep from dying? God said that he was what's the word? Administrating judgment over Egypt and her gods.
Mm-hmm.
That's what God was doing with the angel of death was going to kill every firstborn of human and animal as judgment against Egypt and her gods. This is what God does. Now, if you don't think or believe, I don't know how much of a Christian you are. If you're a full-blown Christian, you don't believe that the Old Testament God does that today because of Jesus. Well, that's because you don't know how to read your Bible. And that's because you haven't actually read the Bible or understood it. But if you read the book of Revelation, which is in your New Testament, there's that scary Old Testament God shows up again. I think lying to Peter in the book of Acts and then falling down dead, being killed by the Holy Spirit is per the Old Testament. That happened in your book of Acts. Yeah, all that to say, you should probably know now that Jesus is coming back, slaughtering kings to set up an earthly kingdom from Jerusalem. And he's coming back only, do you know why Jesus comes back? To deliver Israel, the nation state of Israel, from her enemies. So if you think Jesus is going to come back in your lifetime, well, you should probably take a look at what's going on over there and how it's going on over there, because that's where Jesus is coming back from. Don't make the mistake, like the majority of you already have, because you're anti-Trump and you're pro-BLM and pro-Antifa. Don't make the mistake. Jesus is not coming back the way you think he is, and you might mistake him for a Jewish terrorist hell-bent on Zionism. That'll be your folly. Remember, 50% of you are going to miss him and run out of oil when he comes. Sorry. But that's why we're here, aren't we, Darryl? To help you make sure that you don't run out of oil and you're not one of the 50% projectile that miss him when he comes.
All the Lord has been emphasizing to me over this past couple of years, many will fall away. They're going to go running after the Antichrist and the Antichrist spirit.
They really are. We've talked about that for the last 7 months. 3-letter acronyms, brought little Bobby and Susie out on the street corner to stand there with this little sign, this Marxist Democratic propaganda sign. That's the spirit of Antichrist, especially because those holding up that sign hate Trump, which came in the spirit of prophecy, which is the testimony of Jesus.
You can't hate any leader. Doesn't matter who they are, because God raises up. Nebuchadnezzar says it. God raises him up. God takes him down. He says that in both chapter 2 and 4 of Daniel.
Unless you're a Christian, unless you're a part of the Christian left, here's the Christian left answer to that. Oh, they're talking about kings and rulers, not talking about elected officials. That doesn't apply. Okay.
God is not a respecter of types of government. He doesn't care.
But then the same Muppet that would say that doesn't believe in prophecy or prophets. Well, there you go. Take it.
I mean, look at our situation right now, because we've got Obama light over here and have had. How he won the last election, despite all of the scandals that were encompassing him. I got the Conservative Party the other day asking for a donation. And we just elected a new leader. Canada elected a new leader for the Conservative Party. And the guy said, I got elected as leader as a pro-choice advocate. And so when they called me and they said, we got to get the word out, and, election's coming, and the last guy lost because he didn't have name recognition. I said, no, he didn't. I said, the reason why the last guy lost the election, Andrew Scheer, was because he abandoned the social conservative vote. And I said, you cannot tell me that you are a conservative and you're pro-choice. That's not conservative. I said, you want to know how to get the conservatives elected? I said, go back to biblical values. Stop, affirming abomination as marriage and changing the definition. Stop slaughtering our children. And I mean, the poor guy on the other end, I don't think he'd ever heard anything like this before. And he says to me, well, you certainly seem to know what you certainly seem to feel strongly what you believe. So, I'm not going to give money to some puppet of the left who is masquerading as conservative. And see, the thing is that we had 2 very strong Christians that were running for the leadership of that party. And the guy who won, his name is Aaron O'Toole.
I was going to say something about our fake Spanish Beto in quotes. O'Rourke.
Yeah.
What color are you? What
So this guy's name is O'Toole. O'Toole. He's left. He's a tool of the, those who have taken over the Conservative Party. There's nothing conservative about them. And when he got elected, I had to go to the Lord and I had to say, well, apparently judgment's not done with this country yet.
Yeah.
Because if this guy gets elected, I mean, he's come out and said he's in favor of Sharia law in the past.
That's awesome.
Oh, good.
And
that's going to work well in this country.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here trying to listen to us talk like a new viewer or a new listener watching this thing. This is not a political show. The reason why politics comes up is because people are making a lot of stuff political. You can't be in government and start talking about Sharia law. They just brought in religion. So when what about church and state? What about church and state? The state runs your marriage licenses. That should be the church. It's like, so I don't even don't quit drinking the stinking Kool-Aid.
That says that church and state need to be separated. There's no division between what founders of the Constitution says the state needs to keep out of the church.
Yeah. And, so stop drinking the Kool-Aid. This isn't a political show. People are making it political. I mean, hey, Black Lives Matters are conjuring up spirits to play their game. They just made it religious. It's not us. Got to remember, I'm not walking around with a 3-letter acronym on a sign.
Unless it's like what WWF like that.
Oh my gosh. This is Rabbi Darryl. He's in Canada. So then when he starts talking about kill everybody, let God sort him out, you got to remember he's in Canada. We're just.
Well, I see God doing that all the time.
Yeah.
You commit rebellion and treason against the Lord, and he takes you out.
Yeah. And you can't tell us, like wearing a mask, that's political. Don't tell me it's about your health. That's nonsense. I just had a friend go from Dallas to Spokane, Washington. They took a picture of the airport. They're like, this is a poo-poo show. It's like, it was, people on top of people in the airport, on the plane. This isn't about your health, man. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid. Well, thanks, David. Very kind of you to say that. Well, I don't know. Is fascinated good or fascinated bad?
Beware when someone says, well, that's interesting.
Exactly. Oh, man. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Could you qualify that? Oh, my gosh.
I'm always fascinated by the level of stupidity within some people, too. Wow.
Yeah.
Really?
That's funny. Well, I've actually have met David, so I think I know that's a compliment. I'm just teasing you, David, but not everybody would know that.
No, so like I was saying, is that Justin Trudeau is God's judgment on Canada. Specifically, he's judgment on a sleeping church in Canada. And when I get together with, last Tuesday, right after this show, I did the devotion for the pastors on Zoom. There were 6, 7 of us online. I talked about the feast days. I talked about, God's command for us to return. And it wasn't, I didn't drop the hammer on them or anything like that. But I said that we need to get back to respecting God. And I said, whether you believe that the feasts are necessary or not is irrelevant. I said, why would anybody think that showing up to a time that God says to show up is a bad idea? Why would anybody think that all of a sudden that, these things are bondage, these things are bad, Jesus nailed those to the cross? Like, what would get into your mind to think that God would set up something that he disdained later on? That you understand God if you believe that.
Yeah,
although that nobody showed up to our Sukkot celebration last Shabbat, it seemed to be received. So I don't know, and I don't know if I'm going to continue meeting with them. I don't know what's going to go on from here, but sometimes it's like we are a voice crying in the wilderness. And, the more we get on the megaphone and the more we shout at people, the more they go, la, 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 I'm not going to listen to what you have to say. I don't like it. It doesn't meet with my paradigm. It doesn't meet with my narrative. I don't have to do these things. Okay? Well, because of your way of doing it, look at the mess that we're in. Maybe we should do something different.
Yeah. Hey, it's only going to get stickier, man. We're headed to an election that we might not even have an election.
Who's going to be counting the ballots in the post office? We're checking them in the garbage or the ditch. Or
did you just say who's going to be throwing out ballots in the mail? What did you just say?
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be in. I just can't even.
Gong show.
Oh my God! It is like a gong show, isn't it? I mean, what's his name? Who was it? Wasn't he a CIA or FBI? I think it was CIA. Wasn't he? Did you ever hear about that?
The host.
The host of the Gong Show was apparently a CIA agent.
Was he?
There's a whole book about it. Like there's a whole thing about it. Yeah.
Listen, in the entertainment industry is fair game for being an operative.
Yeah. I have never worked for a 3-letter acronym ever. Just to make it perfectly clear. Oh my gosh. So, hey, pray for our protection, pray for our finances, pray for our families, pray for our spirits and our bodies, pray for our that we would stay safe, that God would continue to protect us from the various attacks of the enemies, the various people that are out there cursing us and doing who knows what. And then also thank you for your blessings and your prayers and your support.
Thanks for putting up with us for an hour and a half or an hour and a quarter every Tuesday.
Yeah. You can buy my books at Planet. Here, I'll put it in here. Planet. For all you, please don't be triggered, all you flat earthers out there. PlanetBlueMedia.com. Because you know what? If you're a flat earther, the only thing to fear is fear itself.
And falling off the edge.
I saw that on a meme. Did you hear that? There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
The reason why we need to keep listening, because this thing is spiritual.
Yeah, that's a magic JPEG, man. He's pulling stuff out of his JPEG.
You know what? I am the only guy with a JPEG like that.
Yeah, thank you. That's also one of my books. Thank you for the continued promotional support there, Rabbi Darryl.
And just to let you know, you can all be in prayer that God has instructed me to begin writing my book again. So I got to.
Well, blessings on you and your family, protection over you guys. Have an amazing rest of your feast, and have an amazing 8th day this weekend, this Friday to Saturday, and yeah.
And if you haven't already been tuning in, we broadcast live 12 noon Eastern time on Shabbat, and you can catch us at MessianicLambRadio.com. We have a live and on-demand service, and God is establishing our new congregation here, so I'm excited about it.
Cool. Well, blessings on you guys. Thanks for showing up again another Tuesday morning, and we will see you next week.
You're listening to Chameleon Church. Biblical Antidotes for the Modern Man. With your host, Allan Aguirre.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
Well, like the old days, huh?